Tag TV and Tag Radio be seen and heard by both technology users and technology producers throughout the state of Georgia and around the world. Low cost, big benefits, powerhouse online branded video and audio has arrived. Tag TV, Tag Radio, there's a lot more to know. This edition of Tech Talk is brought to you by GlobalSpeak.com, new media consultants, corporate video and audio communications, video and audio production and distribution, live and virtual event production. Tag TV and Tag Radio is a service of GlobalSpeak.com, creatively delivering powerful marketing, video, and audio solutions. Has the rhetoric masked an important reality? Do you really believe that Georgia's challenges can be met, say, by government alone, or industry alone, academia, or civil society alone? Think about it. What if all of our state's stakeholders were to communicate with each other and collaborate with each other, as if, well, each corner of Georgia, however different from another, strategically organized to be interdependent with each other, realizing as a goal that we all rise and we all fall together? Greetings, everyone. It's Friday, March 30th, 2012, and this is Tech Talk with Technology Association of Georgia President Tino Mantella. Moving Georgia forward. No, really, Georgia Forward. The Tech Talk turns your attention on a unique nonpartisan initiative that began in early 2010 called Georgia Forward. Its mission, to improve our states by engaging business, government, and civil society leaders to address the biggest policy challenges facing Georgia. And guess what? Collaborate on innovative solutions for long-term success. The Tech Talk today is all about an atmosphere of engagement, cooperative leadership, and enlightened problem-solving for tomorrow. Tino speaks with Amir Farokhi, GeorgiaForward's Executive Director. Amir helped start GeorgiaForward in January 2010 as an initiative of Central Atlanta Progress before launching GeorgiaForward as an independent organization in late 2010. In 2011 and 2012, Amir was named a notable Georgian by Georgia Trend. He was also named in 2011 as a Marshall Memorial Fellow by the German Marshall Fund of the United States and is a fellow and principal with the Truman National Security Project. Prior to leading GeorgiaForward, Amir practiced commercial litigation with an Atlanta law firm. The rhetoric transformed into reality as collaborative, innovative solutions move Georgia forward, as Tino Tech Talks with its Executive Director, Amir Farokhi.
Amir, thank you for joining me on Tech Talk today.
Tino, it's a pleasure to be with you, and we're thrilled that you've given us the opportunity to talk about Georgia Forward.
Yeah, I've had the privilege of participating in a few events of Georgia Forward and been very impressed, but let's assume that some of our listeners don't know as much about Georgia Forward as I do. So why don't we start there and talk a little about what you, who you are, and then what you do.
Sure. Georgia Forward is about 2.5 years old, and we're a nonpartisan public policy organization that really works to engage leaders from across the state, from business, government, civil society, to come together and problem solve through a statewide lens. One of the problems we have seen in Georgia for many, many decades is that the state can be divided a number of ways, Metro Atlanta and the rest of the state, regionally, economically, et cetera, and that there's very little statewide collaboration and visioning going on. So we're working really hard to overcome those older divides and get the state's thought leaders and power brokers together in the same place around some core issues and get folks to think beyond their day-to-day provincial work and think about whether it's education or innovation or infrastructure, what the whole state should be doing rather than just your corner of the state.
And you've done an extensive, I'd say, study in many different ways, certainly focus group type opportunities and then big meetings and all over the state. So you've gathered a lot of data, I know. And so what's the outcome of, or what are your findings in terms of the challenges facing Georgia that would actually require more of a cross-sector, cross-state collaboration, and also, how people need to work together in terms of solving some of the problems and challenges that we have?
Yeah, I mean, the issues that are most pressing probably don't require a lot of data. Most of your listeners could probably come up with them on their own. Most folks would point pretty quickly to public education, to economic development, and infrastructure challenges. Where we see the biggest need for statewide cooperation and visioning are those issues that transcend local and regional jurisdictional lines. One of the biggest challenges the state faces is kind of the lack of a cohesive vision for economic prosperity. Too often we see in the state, if one part of the state gets something in the form of economic development, another part of the state doesn't, the other part of the state kind of views it as that they've lost out. In reality, it's good for everyone. And what we haven't been able to do collectively as a state is say, okay, each part of the state has its own inherent competitive advantages. Let's leverage those so that we're not necessarily competing with one another, but collaborating with one another. Public education is another big one. A lot of our effort is motivated by kind of the want to be a leader, not just in the Southeast, but in the country. And for a long time, the state was that. And probably the last 20 to 30 years, many of our competitor states and regions have raised their game, and the global playing field has gotten much bigger. You have a middle class and a talent base that didn't exist 30, 40 years ago that we're competing against today. And so the challenge that requires much more statewide vision and cooperation is well, how do we reorient ourselves in a 21st century global economy? What infrastructure do we need? What does that mean for natural resources? What does that mean for kind of a knowledge economy? What type of human capital do we need? And how do we bring everyone along, not just Metro Atlanta, but some of our communities that may be agriculturally focused or second cities that have assets but have not yet really hit their stride in the 21st century.
So do you have a focus for 2012 that if you could pick 2 or 3 things that you'd like to see happen through Georgia Forward?
Yeah, we do. As you mentioned, you have attended one or more of our events. In the past, what we've done is we've pulled together a cross-section of folks from across the state for an annual forum. Last year, the theme of our forum was creating an innovation agenda for Georgia. And so we asked folks at the event, what are the top 2 issues you want to see not only Georgia Forward work on, but that you think are the most pressing for the state? And the answers to that question is what's really informing our work this year. And the 2 answers to that question was, one, public education. What's the vision for public education in Georgia, kind of above the squabbles we're having now around charter schools or local governance, et cetera. But really, if we're going to have the best public education system in the country in 10 years, what are the characteristics that we should be really aiming for and gunning for that are going to inform our work today? So on June 28th in Atlanta, we'll be having an education summit at the Georgia Tech Research Institute facility in Midtown. The details are still coming together, so that's one thing we're working on. And out of that, we hope to have kind of a document or report that sets out kind of a very bold, ambitious vision for what public education could be in Georgia if we can work together to make it happen. The other thing we're doing this year is focusing on a statewide vision for prosperity, or a vision for statewide prosperity. As I mentioned earlier, one of the challenges is we've had kind of a herky-jerky success rate on kind of economic success in Georgia. You have Metro Atlanta has really driven the state's economy for the last 20, 30 years, and other parts of the state haven't had similar success. Savannah and Columbus are probably 2 of our brighter spots today. But we want to really look at, in today's global economy with kind of low growth projections in Georgia for 2012, persistent but declining unemployment, how do we reorient ourselves to leverage the strengths that we have? Should we be doing and focusing on a few new different things? But really, what's the best way to approach the current economic paradigm for the state, and not just think of it as kind of a regional answer, but as a statewide answer. So the 2 big issues we're focusing on this year, public education and then a statewide vision for prosperity.
And being that the Technology Association of Georgia, and we know that technology factors into any sort of positive movement that whether it's education or any of the other factors that you've mentioned. So how would you describe technology in terms of the sector, if you will, and also the need for technology and the role that it should play or will be playing in Georgia Forward?
Yeah, I think as a broader framework, you hit it on the head. Technology is integrated into every single policy issue and policy challenge. I think we crossed that bridge a few decades ago. I think the challenge now, and this is something that the Technology Association of Georgia is doing very well, is how do we promote and leverage the technology assets we have in the state, whether they're private or public, the niches that do very well in Georgia. I know financial services, technology has a big sector in Georgia. But how do we really leverage that ecosystem to continue to produce new entrepreneurial activities, to generate future economic growth, and to attract growth that's happening elsewhere here to Georgia, whether that's companies that are looking to relocate or business opportunities for companies that are here. And with respect to Georgia Forward, and we're always looking for a wide array of perspectives to engage in our programming. So whether it's public education, whether it's the future of rural Georgia or economic development around the state, the technology sector is going to play a particularly important role. And I think the governor realizes this. Most city leaders realize this. The private sector clearly realizes this. But as we really try and hit our stride in a knowledge economy and promote an ecosystem that consists of a large amount of innovation, the tech sector is going to play a really, really large role in that. And part of our challenge as a state, and this isn't really Georgia Forward's kind of main focus, is to adjust the narrative about what Georgia is and what our brand is. And I think one of our great assets, and you would agree with me, and I think your listeners would agree with me because they're members of the Technology Association, is that this is a great place for tech companies. It's a great place for innovation. We have our challenges, particularly when it comes to venture capital, but we're working on them. But the world needs to know, and the nation needs to know that beyond our kind of stereotypical brands as hospitality and Gone with the Wind and Peaches, there's a thriving tech sector here that has a tremendous amount of growth potential and a lot of opportunity. So we're always looking for experts and leaders in the tech field to engage with Georgia Forward. For folks who are listening, you can check out our website. It's GeorgiaForward.org, and we'll continue to post information on events that we're having that folks can participate in or sit on panels and really help drive the conversation about our state's future.
And say one more time the June event and how people could get involved with that, if they like.
Yeah, sure. We have two events on the calendar right now for this year. First is the June 28th event. It's a summit on public education in Georgia. It's going to be a day-long event. It's a Thursday. If you go to GeorgiaForward.org, we'll have some information up, but you can plug in your email address, and we'll keep you posted on the event's status. The other big event we have is our annual forum, which this year is going to be September 12th and 13th up in Athens at the Classic Center. And the focus, the theme of that event is going to be New World, New Georgia, Revisioning Statewide Prosperity. And we'll bring in speakers from around the country. It's going to be highly interactive, and we'd love to have folks who are members of TAG there and participating.
Well, great. Well, thank you for joining me on Tech Talk, and thanks for the work you're doing in Georgia Forward.
Likewise, thank you to everything TAG is doing, and look forward to hearing great things about your work.